Welcome to Cluster Fudge, the podcast that unravels the mess, one thread at a time. I'm your host, Alexandra, and today we're diving into a topic that makes some people roll their eyes, others clench their fists, and a few run for the hills. Taxes. Now, before you groan or hit skip, stay with me. This isn't a boring economics class or some dull lecture about April deadlines. This is about why taxes matter, why they're more than just a financial nuisance. Why they're the glue that keeps civilization together, and what happens when we stop believing in the value of chipping in. This episode is called Why You Should Pay Your Taxes. Let's begin. Taxes. The very word makes people uncomfortable. It's one of those rare topics that cuts across political ideologies, income levels, and even national borders. Whether you're a libertarian tech bro, a working class trucker, or a middle-income parent, there's a good chance that when you hear tax season, your gut reaction is a mix of dread, suspicion, and maybe even rage. But why? Why does the concept of taxation provoke such intense reactions? Let's break this down. Not just economically, but emotionally, historically, and culturally. The emotional weight of taxes. First, let's address the most obvious. Taxes feel like loss. You work hard for your money. You put in hours, maybe overtime. You manage stress, deadlines, maybe even a boss you don't like. And when you finally get your paycheck, you see that chunk missing. The government already took its share. You didn't authorize the deduction in a personal meeting. You didn't get to choose where your money goes. It just vanishes. It can feel like someone reaching into your wallet without your consent. It's the opposite of rewarding. It doesn't feel like generosity. It feels like theft, or at least forced charity. This emotional association is powerful. It's why people say things like, I don't mind paying for X, but why do I have to fund? Because when money is removed from us involuntarily, we want some control, or at least some reassurance that it's being used wisely. And when we don't get that transparency, when headlines are filled with stories about government waste, fraud, and bloated spending, it confirms the worst suspicions people already have. Here's something deeper. Taxes challenge the myth of personal autonomy, the illusion that you're entirely self-made. In many cultures, especially American culture, individualism is sacred. I built this, I earned this, no one helped me. Taxes contradict that story. They imply that your success is at least partly built on shared infrastructure, public education, roads, safety, clean air, legal protections, internet development, and so on. So when someone takes from your earnings to redistribute it, it can feel like a denial of your identity, especially for high earners. That's why tax debates often turn philosophical. They're not just about brackets or deductions, they're about what we owe to each other, and whether success means freedom from society or responsibility to it. Then there's the historical context, and it's big. Let's go back to the Boston Tea Party, 1773. British colonists dumped crates of tea into Boston Harbor in protest of the Tea Act, which allowed the British East India Company to sell tea cheaper than local merchants, undercutting colonial trade. But the deeper issue? Taxation without representation. Colonists were being taxed by a parliament thousands of miles away, with no voice or vote in the matter. That anger didn't just spark protest, it ignited a revolution. America, quite literally, was born out of tax resistance. Fast forward a couple hundred years, and you see echoes of that legacy in everything from anti-tax bumper stickers to political campaigns that promise no new taxes. The word tax in American politics has become shorthand for government overreach, for elitist rule, for bureaucracy that doesn't understand real people. It's not just policy, it's personal, it's emotional, it's revolutionary. Hollywood and TV haven't helped either. Taxes are rarely portrayed in a flattering light. Think about it. The IRS agent is always the villain in movies. Cold, bureaucratic, often clueless, sometimes vindictive. In comedies, tax day is treated like a horror film. In action thrillers, tax havens and offshore accounts are glamorized as symbols of power and escape. Even superheroes and outlaws alike are either dodging taxes or fighting corrupt regimes that demand them. Culturally, we associate taxation not with citizenship, but with suffocating control. Tax complexity, confusion fuels contempt. Let's talk structure for a second. Have you ever tried filing your taxes without software, without an accountant? The tax system is absurdly complex. The IRS tax code is over 70,000 pages long. Between deductions, exemptions, credits, forms, and penalties, the average person has little chance of understanding it all, let alone optimizing it. This complexity does two things. One, it creates resentment. Why should something so essential be so hard to do? Two, it creates distrust. People assume, often rightly, that the wealthy and powerful can hire experts to manipulate the system, while the rest of us cross our fingers and hope we didn't mess up line 13b. Here's a contradiction that sits at the heart of many societies. People want government services, but they don't want to fund them. They want clean streets, good schools, fast emergency response, disaster relief, veterans care, public transit, national defence. But the second taxes come up. It's, why should I have to pay for that? This is the core paradox. We want a good society, but we resent the price tag. And the truth is that's unsustainable. You cannot have strong infrastructure, fair systems, and effective protections without someone footing the bill. And if not you, then who? So yes, taxes have an ugly reputation. They feel intrusive. They feel unfair. They poke holes in our sense of independence. They remind us that we're part of something larger, something messy, flawed, and occasionally inefficient. But maybe that discomfort is part of the point, because taxes are not about perfection. They're about participation. And in a time when so many people are disengaged, disillusioned, or checked out of civic life, maybe paying taxes is one of the few ways we still contribute, whether we like it or not. But the story doesn't stop here. Next, let's dive into what taxes actually pay for and whether we're getting our money's worth. Let's shift gears. We've just unpacked why people hate taxes, the emotional baggage, the cultural rebellion, the bureaucratic mess. But now it's time to zoom out, to lift our heads from the frustrations and look at what's actually being done with the money we contribute. Because at the end of the day, we don't pay taxes for the sake of paying taxes. We pay taxes for what they buy. And what they buy, when the system is working, is nothing short of civilization itself. The unseen architecture of society. Let me ask you a question. When was the last time you thought about infrastructure? I'm not talking about shiny new stadiums or skyscrapers. I'm talking about the invisible web of services and protections that surround you, silently, constantly. Things like clean water, street lights, sewage systems, public hospitals, garbage collection, emergency 911 response, building inspections, food safety testing, snow plows in the winter, disaster relief when things go wrong. Most of us don't think about these things because they're working. That's the paradox. When government services function well, they become invisible. We take them for granted. But behind every smoothly running system, there's a budget, a payroll, a public investment. Let's start with one of the biggest categories, education. Public schools are funded primarily by local, state and federal taxes. That includes everything from teacher salaries to textbooks, from school buses to special education programs. Think about what happens when this funding gets slashed. Larger class sizes, fewer extracurricular programs, outdated materials, underpaid, overworked teachers, achievement gaps that never close. Now think bigger. When education is underfunded, the entire future workforce suffers. An uneducated population isn't just a moral tragedy, it's an economic time bomb. Taxes pay now, so society doesn't pay far more later. You know those police officers, paramedics and firefighters we call heroes? You know those ambulances and fire trucks that show up in minutes when your house is burning or your child can't breathe? They don't fund themselves. Emergency services are almost entirely tax-funded. That includes 911 call centres, first responder training and salaries, equipment, vehicles, uniforms, community outreach programs, crime labs and investigations, emergency disaster coordination. Imagine if those services were privatised. Imagine having to swipe a credit card before a paramedic could treat you. That's not a society. That's a nightmare. Roads, bridges and transportation. Drive much? Walk? Bike? Take the bus or train? All of it, from pothole repair to subway expansion, is supported by public funds. That includes highway patrol, bridge inspections, snow removal, public transit subsidies, bicycle lanes, airport security, traffic light maintenance, crosswalks and accessibility features. Even when you're just taking a stroll around the block, you're walking on something paid for by collective contribution. And let's not forget the supply chains that move food, medicine, fuel, all reliant on public roads, ports and rail, public health and healthcare systems. Then there's healthcare, not just hospitals, but public health infrastructure. Your tax dollars support Medicare and Medicaid, Children's Health Insurance Program, CHIP, Veterans Hospitals, the CDC, Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, NIH, National Institutes of Health, FDA, Food and Drug Administration, pandemic response and vaccine distribution, mental health crisis hotlines, poison control centers. These services don't just save lives, they prevent collapse. When COVID-19 hit, who funded the ventilators, the emergency hospitals, the vaccine research, the contact tracing, the economic stimulus, the hazard pay for frontline workers? We did. Through taxes. Without collective funding, a health crisis quickens into a societal disaster. Social security and retirement safety nets. If you're paying payroll taxes, you're funding more than just today's retirees. You're funding your future. Social security, Medicare, and disability insurance provide a baseline of dignity for millions of elderly and vulnerable Americans. These programs keep seniors out of poverty, provide healthcare for those who can't work, offer disability insurance for the injured, support widows, orphans, and veterans. These aren't handouts, they're safety nets designed so that no one falls through the cracks completely. And in a society that prides itself on compassion and progress, these nets matter. Environmental protection and natural resources, your taxes also protect the world around you. Through agencies like the Environmental Protection Agency, EPA, US Forest Service and National Park Service, taxes pay for clean air regulations, clean water enforcement, protected lands and wildlife refuges, wildfire prevention and response, pollution monitoring, national and state parks. Every time you hike a trail, camp under the stars, drink from the tap, or breathe clean air in a city with millions of cars, you are benefiting from publicly funded regulation and preservation. Nature doesn't protect itself. It takes work. It takes scientists. It takes funding, innovation, science, and technology. Here's a fun fact. The smartphone you're holding, the internet you're listening to this podcast on, they were made possible by government-funded research. Public tax dollars have funded NASA, DARPA, which helped create the internet, GPS technology, weather satellites, renewable energy research, cancer treatments, clean energy grants, AI and machine learning funding. When we invest in science as a society, the dividends are massive, often world-changing. There's the legal and democratic system itself. Your taxes pay for court systems, public defenders, judges and juries, election security, ballot printing, voting machines, poll worker salaries, regulatory enforcement, civil rights investigations. Every time you vote or file a lawsuit or sit on a jury or read about a politician being held accountable, you're seeing tax dollars in action. Democracy does not operate on goodwill alone. So the next time someone says, "Where do my taxes even go?" you can say, everywhere. They go to the street you drive on, the clean water you drink, the school your child attends, the nurse who treats you, the plane that flies overhead, the vaccine in your bloodstream, the firefighter on the truck, the scientist in the lab, the judge in the courtroom, the park where you had your first kiss, the disaster team that shows up when the world turns upside down. Taxes pay for life in motion. And sure, we can talk about inefficiencies. We should talk about waste, corruption, priorities and oversight. But if we only focus on what's broken, we risk forgetting everything that works and how easily it can disappear if we stop paying into the system. Civilization, friends, doesn't run on fumes. It runs on faith and funding. And we are that funding. Let's take a moment to reframe everything. Up to now, we've looked at how taxes are perceived and what they actually fund. But if we're going to get honest about the role taxes play in our lives, we need to stop treating them like an expense and start seeing them for what they truly are, an investment. Because the truth is, taxes are not just about subtraction. They're about multiplication, not just about money leaving your hands, but about value flowing back to you and to everyone around you. And once we understand this, it fundamentally shifts the way we relate to the very concept of taxation. In our personal lives, when we lose money, we think of a bad purchase, a failed investment, a late fee, a scam, a frivolous expense. We associate losing money with irresponsibility or misfortune. So it's no surprise that when people see the deductions on their paycheck, federal, state, Social Security, Medicare, it feels like being robbed by invisible hands. But that's not what taxes are. Unlike a bad investment or a scam, taxes buy something real, even if you don't see it right away. And that's the core difference. Let's say you pay $5,000 in taxes this year. Did you get a receipt showing where every dollar went? No. Did you get to select line item purchases like you're on Amazon? Of course not. But maybe that $5,000 helped. Resurface a dangerous road you drive on, fund a vaccine that protected your elderly neighbour, pay a teacher who inspired your niece, train a firefighter who responded when your friend's apartment caught fire, keep the air cleaner for the city you live in, provide meals for a struggling veteran. That's not loss. That's contribution. That's value. That's investment. Let's borrow a term from the financial world. ROI, return on investment. When you invest in the stock market, you don't expect instant gratification. You're betting on long-term gains. The same applies to taxation. Only instead of profits, you're investing in shared prosperity. Here's what that ROI looks like. Public safety keeps you alive and your property protected. Public education creates a literate, skilled workforce that drives the economy. Healthcare funding reduces the spread of disease, even among people you'll never meet. Clean energy investment reduces climate risk and energy costs. Welfare systems reduce homelessness, crime, and societal instability. Research grants produce technologies that go on to generate trillions in economic value. Early childhood programs produce better outcomes later in life, less crime, more productivity. Disaster response systems prevent billions in economic loss from hurricanes, wildfires, and pandemics. Every one of these is a return, sometimes direct, often indirect, but always real. You're not just a taxpayer, you're a shareholder in democracy. Think about this metaphor for a second. When you pay taxes, you're not just handing over money, you're buying a stake in your country. You're a shareholder in a company called the United States of America, Inc., or whatever your nation might be. And as a shareholder, you have rights, you have a vote, you influence policy, you get dividends in the form of clean air, working bridges, safe food, and so much more. Sure, the board of directors, your elected officials, may mismanage things now and then, but that's a reason to vote smarter, not stop investing altogether. Because here's the alternative. If you don't invest, if no one invests, the company fails. And in the case of a country, that means a breakdown of everything we rely on: law, order, education, infrastructure, public health, national defense. Civilizations don't collapse because of one event. They collapse when enough people stop believing that the shared project is worth supporting. High-tax countries, high quality of life. Still skeptical? Let's look at global examples. The Nordic countries, Sweden, Norway, Finland, Denmark, are often used as case studies. Yes, they have high taxes, but they also consistently top global rankings in education, health outcomes, infrastructure, clean energy transition, happiness and well-being, social trust and democratic satisfaction. They prove that taxation, when paired with transparency and competent governance, can produce extraordinary societal returns. People in those countries don't see taxes as theft. They see them as social membership dues, the cost of living in a healthy, thriving society. And yes, no country is perfect, but the idea that high taxation leads to stagnation or tyranny, that's simply not supported by evidence. What if you could opt out the dangerous fantasy of pick and choose citizenship? Now, let's play devil's advocate. What if you could pick and choose where your taxes go? Or worse, what if you could opt out entirely? At first, that sounds nice, but think about it. Someone doesn't want to fund public schools because they don't have kids. Someone else doesn't want to fund public hospitals because they're healthy. Someone else opts out of road maintenance because they bike to work. Someone else doesn't want to pay for social security because they have private investments. You end up with a society where nobody supports anything that doesn't directly benefit them in the moment. And that's not society. That's anarchy dressed as freedom. Taxes are the opposite of that mindset. They say, I'll help pay for something you need today because I might need your help tomorrow. That's what keeps the circle of humanity alive. The hidden power of paying it forward. If you're fortunate enough to be earning a stable income, congratulations. That's no small thing in today's world. But paying taxes isn't just about what you need. It's about what others need and what future generations will need. It's about paying it forward. That means funding research that your grandchild will benefit from, keeping ecosystems healthy for people not yet born, building bridges, both literal and metaphorical, that span across time, investing in safety nets just in case your luck changes. Because the truth is, no one's security is permanent. Life can change in a blink, and when that happens, you'll be thankful someone else believed in the system and paid in before you needed it. So let's stop talking about taxes like we're being punished. You're not being fined, you're participating. You're not being drained, you're contributing. You're saying, I want better schools, even if I don't have kids. I want clean air, even if I don't see the smog. I want ambulances on standby, even if I don't need one today. I want bridges that hold, lights that work, and a safety net, not just for me, but for everyone, because that's what healthy societies do. Taxes aren't just about economics, they're about ethics and faith and investment in something bigger than yourself. And honestly, that's a beautiful thing. Coming up next, what happens when people start believing that taxes are nothing more than theft and stop paying altogether? Spoiler alert, it's not pretty. Stay with me. Segment 4, the myth of I don't use government services. So far, we've walked through the reasons taxes have an ugly reputation, and we've broken down the reality that taxes are an investment. But there's another myth that stubbornly lingers in the air. A myth used by people from all income levels, but especially the wealthy and ultra-wealthy, to justify low tax contributions or tax avoidance. And that myth sounds like this: I don't even use government services. Or its cousin, why should I pay for other people's problems? Let's call it what it is: delusion wrapped in privilege. Because the truth is, everyone uses government services every single day, whether they know it or not. And today, we're going to break that myth down piece by piece, because living in a modern, functioning society means being surrounded by public infrastructure, whether you recognize it or not. Start with the obvious: the roads. Let's begin with something even the most hardened anti-government, anti-tax, I've got a bunker in the woods individualist can't escape: roads. You drove to work, picked your kid up from school, had groceries delivered, took an Uber, walked on a sidewalk. That's all public infrastructure, and it's maintained by your local, state and federal taxes. Without it, we'd all be stuck in mud or in danger or completely cut off. And those roads, they don't just appear. They're built, inspected, repaved, ploughed and maintained, all by public funds. So unless you're flying around in a private jet and teleporting to your destinations, yes, you use government services. Let's talk about safety. When you're in danger, a car accident, a break-in, a fire, a health emergency, that entire response network, tax-funded. And even if you haven't called them recently, their presence shapes your daily life. You feel safer walking down the street because you know there's a firehouse nearby. Your car insurance costs less because emergency services reduce risk. Your house is less likely to burn down because zoning laws and fire codes exist, and those are enforced by, you guessed it, publicly funded entities. These services are always on, even when you don't need them, and that's the whole point. Public safety isn't an a la carte service, it's a social guarantee. Health and safety protections you never see. This is where it gets subtle. You may think, I have private health insurance, I go to a private doctor, I'm not using government healthcare, okay? But step back. That meat you ate, inspected by the USDA, that bottle of water regulated by the EPA, That medication you picked up, approved by the FDA. That clean air you're breathing, protected by federal and state emissions laws. That building you're in, built under public safety codes. That plane you boarded last summer, regulated by the FAA. These systems protect you before something goes wrong. And they're so baked into the modern world, we rarely think about them unless they fail. In other words, we're like fish swimming in clean water, unaware of the filtration system just out of sight. But make no mistake, the system is there, and it's being paid for collectively. Education benefits you even if you don't have kids. One of the most common refrains from people trying to justify tax resistance is, I don't have kids, why should I pay for public schools? Answer, because an educated population benefits everyone. Would you rather live in a community with literate, employable, engaged citizens, or one filled with dropouts, unemployment, misinformation, and crime? When kids are educated, your neighborhood is safer, your workforce is more skilled, your economy is stronger, your innovation capacity increases, and yes, your property value rises. Public education isn't a personal favor, it's a national investment, one that has ripple effects across generations. So yes, even if you never have children, you're still benefiting from every child who grows up literate, capable, and socially functional. This is one that really blows up the myth. A lot of wealthy individuals or business owners say, I built this myself. I didn't get any help from the government. Really? Let's walk through that. Your corporation was formed using laws and regulations established by the government. Your contracts are enforced in public courts. Your bank is insured by the FDIC so you don't lose your deposits during a crash. Your property is protected by public police. Your product is transported via public roads. Your online store exists on an internet funded originally by government R&D. Your electricity comes through a regulated public utility grid. If your business is profitable, that's great. You should be proud. But don't pretend it was built in a vacuum. Your success was made possible by a massive publicly funded foundation, one that made it safe, legal, and viable for you to operate. The big stuff. Satellites, weather, space, science. Here's another one. The internet, GPS, and weather forecasting. None of that would exist in its current form without public investment. GPS, developed by the US Department of Defense. The internet, born from DARPA, a federal agency. Weather satellites and climate data, managed by NOAA, NASA, and other public entities. Public maps, government produced. Time standardization, global coordinates, space science, data access, all public sector. You rely on this stuff every day, even when you don't know you are. Try navigating your day without a smartphone, internet, or traffic report. You'll quickly realize your private lifestyle is built on public foundations. The off-the-grid illusion. There are people who live off the grid, who grow their own food, use solar panels, homeschool their kids, and so on. And some of them proudly say, I don't need the government. But even they benefit from the military protecting national borders, international trade keeping markets stable, national monetary systems ensuring their savings aren't worthless, public disease prevention keeping epidemics at bay, emergency services ready in case a wildfire or flood hits. Unless you live in a total wilderness, disconnected from all modern systems and barter with chickens instead of currency, you use government services. And frankly, even then, you still benefit from the absence of warlords, which is only possible because some form of government order still exists. The real reason people say this. So what's really going on when someone says, I don't use government services? Usually they mean, I don't use welfare or social assistance. I don't take handouts. I don't get free stuff. And let's unpack that. First, it's not true. Even millionaires use subsidized infrastructure. Second, it reveals a toxic misunderstanding of what government is for. Government is not just a backup plan for the poor. It's a collective framework that creates stability, opportunity, and safety for all. Public services aren't handouts. They're investments in humanity. So the next time someone smugly says, I don't use government services, you can say, then stop drinking clean water, stop driving on paved roads, stop using GPS, stop expecting the fire department to show up, stop depending on air traffic control, and while you're at it, stop pretending that civilization just runs itself. Because the truth is, you do use government services, we all do, every minute of every day. And that's not a sign of weakness or failure, it's a sign that we're part of something bigger, a shared ecosystem of support, opportunity and protection. And that ecosystem, it needs to be paid for. And that's why we pay taxes. In our next segment, we'll explore what happens when people stop paying, when the illusion of individualism overtakes the needs of society. When the rich don't pay their share, let's be blunt, America doesn't have a spending problem, it has a revenue problem. And that revenue problem has a name, the wealthy not paying their fair share. Now, some people will recoil at that. They'll say, why punish success? Or why tax the job creators? Or the ever popular, I worked hard for my money, why should I give more of it away? But this segment isn't about punishing anyone. It's about something deeper. Responsibility, sustainability, and fairness. Because when the rich don't pay what they owe, everyone else pays more and gets less. Let's unpack what's really happening, not with slogans or sound bites, but with evidence. The tax code is built to protect the wealthy, not the worker. We're often told the rich are taxed too much, but the numbers don't lie. The statutory income tax rate might be 37% for top earners, but actual effective tax rates for billionaires like Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos, often under 10%, sometimes even lower. And thanks to loopholes, offshore accounts, and carried interest rules, the ultra-rich can legally avoid paying millions, even billions in taxes. Compare that to the average American who gets their paycheck and immediately sees federal income tax, state income tax if applicable, Medicare, Social Security, sales tax, property tax, gas tax, toll roads, fees for everything from vehicle registration to court services. In many cases, a middle-class worker pays a higher percentage of their income in taxes than a hedge fund manager pulling in $100 million. Let that sink in. Wealth isn't just income, it's accumulated power. Here's the kicker. The rich don't just earn money. They own assets, stocks, real estate, art, private equity, business equity, intellectual property. These assets grow in value, often untaxed, until they're sold. But many of the ultra-wealthy don't need to sell anything. They just borrow against their assets at low interest rates, a loophole that lets them live tax-free while sitting on mountains of wealth. It's called the buy, borrow, die strategy. 1. Buy assets that appreciate in value. 2. Borrow against them to fund your lifestyle tax-free. 3. Die and pass it all on with the step-up basis, erasing the capital gains taxes. It's not criminal, but it's immoral. Because while the working class is taxed on every hour, every tip, every commission, the rich are watching their wealth multiply untouched. Corporate taxes have collapsed. It's not just individuals. Corporate America is also dodging its share. In the 1950s, corporate income taxes made up about 30% of federal revenue. Today, less than 7%. Some of the biggest corporations in the world, Amazon, Nike, FedEx, Netflix, have paid $0 in federal taxes in multiple years, despite record-breaking profits. How? Through tax credits, offshore subsidiaries, shell corporations, and accounting acrobatics so sophisticated they make your head spin. And when these companies don't pay, the rest of us pick up the tab through crumbling schools, underfunded infrastructure, unaffordable healthcare, and broken safety nets. Let's be clear, this isn't about jealousy. It's about a functional economy. And a system can't function when the richest players, wealth buys influence, and influence writes the rules. Here's the scary part. When the wealthy don't pay their fair share, it's not just a math problem, it's a democracy problem. Money buys. Lobbyists, campaign donations, think tank PACs and super PACs, media influence, policy white papers, candidate access, quiet backroom meetings. So the system becomes self-reinforcing. The rich fund the politicians who write the tax laws that protect the rich. And when ordinary people try to change the system through protests, voting, advocacy, they're up against a wall of money that shapes the narrative and blocks reform. This isn't a conspiracy theory. It's how modern oligarchic influence works, out in the open with receipts. Globally, we're falling behind. Other developed nations are watching us, and not with admiration. While many European countries use higher progressive taxes to fund free healthcare, affordable college, paid parental leave, universal childcare, modern public transit, the US continues to protect billionaires and starve public systems. We're becoming a country where the wealthy live in private bubbles. Private schools, private security, private healthcare, private jets, gated communities, offshore accounts, and everyone else is left navigating potholes, ER bills, debt and bureaucracy. It's a tale of two Americas, and taxes are a huge reason why. When the rich don't pay, society decays. Underfunded schools, teacher shortages, lead pipes and unsafe drinking water, emergency rooms shutting down, public transit falling apart, infrastructure collapsing, public housing deteriorating, climate resilience underfunded. These aren't accidents. They're symptoms of a system that's been hollowed out at the top. When we say the rich don't pay their share, it's not a grievance. It's a warning. Because if public goods erode far enough, society doesn't just become unfair, it becomes unlivable. And eventually, the ultra-wealthy won't be able to buy their way out of the instability they helped create. But let's end this segment with something simple. Paying taxes isn't about punishing the rich. It's about protecting civilization. It's about saying, yes, I made money, and I recognize that I did it within a society built by others. Yes, I believe in paying into the system that made my success possible. Yes, I care about what happens to people beyond my own driveway. Because when the rich don't pay, it sends a message to everyone else. You're on your own. And when enough people believe that, everything falls apart. We're not there yet, but we're close, and the only way back is forward, together. So what happens when people stop paying their taxes? Let's strip it down, not philosophically, not ideologically, practically, systemically, historically, because this isn't some far-off hypothetical. We have consequences, precedents, case studies, and spoiler alert, it's never good. The first sign, the system starts cracking. Taxes are not just about cash flow, they are about trust. The entire tax system, particularly in democratic societies like the US, operates on something known as voluntary compliance. Not because we choose whether or not to pay, but because the system depends on the assumption that most of us will comply. When that trust erodes, when people begin to believe that the rich don't pay, so why should I? The government is corrupt, so why give them my money? I'm not getting anything in return anyway. Compliance drops. And when compliance drops, so does revenue. This creates a doom loop. Lower compliance, less funding, public decay, less trust, even lower compliance. Eventually, it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy where the very act of refusing to contribute becomes the excuse for the system's failure. Historical case study, Greece's tax evasion crisis. Want to see what happens when a tax system falls apart? Look at Greece, early 2010s. Widespread tax evasion, especially among the wealthy, was culturally normalized. Many citizens viewed paying taxes as a joke or a scam. The result? Public debt ballooned, social services were gutted, hospitals and schools shut down, youth unemployment soared over 50%, poverty and homelessness skyrocketed. Eventually, Greece had to be bailed out by the European Union, with austerity measures so severe they pushed the country into a full-blown humanitarian crisis. The rich still found ways to shield their wealth, but the poor and middle class paid the price twice. First through taxes they did pay, then again through services they no longer received. We don't have to go overseas. Right here in the US, we've seen cities and towns experience what happens when people and corporations stop paying their share. Take Detroit, once a symbol of American industry. Decades of disinvestment, declining tax revenue and population loss led to bankruptcy, closed schools, non-functioning streetlights, police response times over an hour, neighborhoods with no running water, or San Bernardino, California, or Stockton, or Flint, where budget shortfalls led to one of the worst public health disasters in US history, toxic water piped into homes to save money. These aren't flukes, they're warnings. When the money dries up, so does democracy, safety, and public dignity. Let's take it to the macro level. If enough people and corporations dodge taxes, or if tax policy keeps slashing rates without replacing the revenue, the entire federal system begins to wobble. Here's what that looks like. Medicare runs dry. Social security becomes insolvent. Highways fall apart. Military readiness weakens. Disaster response slows down. Public health infrastructure crumbles. We're not just talking about potholes and delayed mail. We're talking about economic instability, weakened national defense, and a crumbling safety net for 350 million people. And guess what fills the vacuum? Not community, not ingenuity. Chaos, exploitation, privatization, corruption. When people stop paying into a shared system, private entities swoop in to sell what used to be public. You think taxes are bad? Try paying $100,000 a year for clean water, fire protection, or an ambulance ride. A two-tiered future. Pay or perish. Let's be honest about what that world looks like. The rich retreat into walled-off communities with private police, private infrastructure, and private healthcare. The rest are left to navigate the remains of public life, crowded ERs, broken buses, teachers quitting in droves, bridges literally collapsing. We become a society of hyper-privilege versus survival mode, a modern feudalism where your zip code determines your worth and the commons are dead. And once that gap becomes too wide, it cannot be bridged. That's not a political warning. That's a historical truth. Societies don't last long when the top stops contributing and the bottom stops believing. Here's the thing. When people stop paying their taxes, the fallout isn't always loud. There's no dramatic explosion. It's quieter, slower, but just as deadly. Civic engagement declines. Trust in institutions evaporates. Conspiracies flourish. Democracy erodes from the inside. Neighbours stop seeing each other as part of the same story. Because at the core, taxes are more than a transaction. They are a signal that we believe in something bigger than ourselves. When that signal goes silent, we lose more than money. We lose the concept of us. So what happens when people stop paying their taxes? The same thing that happens when people stop taking care of their homes, stop showing up for their families, stop maintaining their relationships. Things fall apart. But it doesn't have to be that way. When we pay our taxes fully, fairly, and collectively, we reinvest in the world we want to live in. Not a perfect world, not a utopia, but a world where children can go to schools safely, seniors can afford to age with dignity, roads are drivable, hospitals are staffed, public libraries are open, and the basic threads of civilization don't unravel. That's not socialism, that's sustainability. And it starts with everyone pitching in, no exceptions. Why paying taxes is patriotic. So let's bring this full circle. We've talked about the reputation of taxes, how they've been framed as theft, punishment, or government overreach. We've unravelled what taxes actually pay for. Roads, schools, hospitals, clean water, national security, scientific progress, and safety nets that keep our society from collapsing in on itself. We've explored how taxes are not a loss, but an investment in our shared future. A down payment on a better, safer, fairer tomorrow. We've debunked the myth that some people can opt out of government services. We've examined the cost, moral and economic, of the wealthy dodging their fair share. And we've looked critically at waste and inefficiency and how to hold our systems accountable without tearing them down. But here's the heart of it all. Paying taxes is patriotic. I know, that's not a sexy slogan. You're not going to slap that on a t-shirt and start a revolution. But it's true. And we need to start saying it loudly. Patriotism isn't just flags and fireworks. Too often, patriotism is reduced to aesthetics, waving a flag, singing the anthem, posting emotional tributes on the 4th of July, supporting the troops, but only in hashtags and bumper stickers. But real patriotism isn't performative, it's participatory. Real patriotism means showing up for your country, even when it's messy, even when it's flawed, even when it disappoints you. And yes, real patriotism means putting your money where your mouth is. Taxes are the infrastructure of patriotism. You know what shows love for your country? Want disaster relief when your state floods or burns? Pay taxes. Want strong borders and functioning embassies? Pay taxes. Want clean air, safe food, regulated medicine? Pay taxes. You don't get the country you dream of by cutting the check to zero. You get it by investing. Every year, for generations. That's not government control. That's shared responsibility. That's patriotism. We don't have a nation without each other. The most radical, misunderstood truth about America is this. We don't exist as individuals, not in the way we think we do. We are a web, a system, a network of lives and labor and luck that only works when we believe in something bigger than ourselves. If you live in a country that built the road you drove to work on, educated the doctor who performed your surgery, regulates the plane you fly on and the food you eat, protects your home through firefighters, soldiers and paramedics, then you benefit from that collective infrastructure. You are woven into it. And that means you have an obligation, not just a legal one, but a moral one, to help sustain it. Paying taxes is a moral vote for the kind of country you want to live in. Every dollar you pay is a vote. It's a vote for clean drinking water. It's a vote for children who can read. It's a vote for elderly people who aren't abandoned. It's a vote for bridges that don't collapse. It's a vote for parks where families gather and skies where planes don't crash. And yes, sometimes that money is mismanaged. Sometimes it's wasted. Sometimes it doesn't go where it should. But you know what? You don't stop voting just because a politician disappoints you. And you don't stop paying taxes just because the system isn't perfect. You work to make it better. You keep showing up. That's what grown-ups do. That's what patriots do. Thank you. Not just for listening, but for caring. Because it's easy to be cynical, easy to tune out, easy to say it's all rigged, so why bother? But I believe, truly, that if enough of us stay engaged, keep asking questions, and keep investing in the idea of a functioning society, we can fix what's broken. Taxes aren't the enemy. They're a tool, one of the few we all still share. So the next time you grumble about that paycheck deduction or file your 1040 in frustration, take a breath and remind yourself, this is my receipt, this is my contribution, this is me giving a damn. Not just about myself, but about the country I call home. And that, my friend, is patriotism. Until next time, I'm Alexandra. Thanks for listening to Cluster Fudge.